What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. This is my full card breakdown and prediction video for UFC Tampa. We have Joaquin Buckley going against Colby Covington. And yeah, this is the last UFC card of the year, and it's a good one. I thought last week's card was phenomenal. I think this week's card is going to be a fun one as well. I will be in attendance for UFC Tampa. I'm leaving Friday. Going to hang out in Tampa Friday night, go to the fight Saturday, and then fly home Sunday. So looking forward to getting into that Florida sun and yeah, watching some good fights. It's a good card. 13 fights on it. Definitely looking forward to breaking it down. Before we get into it, a couple very important things I need to mention. So last week I was extremely sick. I've been battling pneumonia the last 2 weeks. I'm finally feeling somewhat better. I think I'm like 85%, 90% right now. So yeah, finally feeling better. And I forgot the significant strike contest last week. Don't know what came over me. I don't know if it was the pneumonia, but yeah, forgot the contest. So we're going to do the significant strike contest this week, and it's fine, end of year with a bang. So to enter the significant strike contest, like the video, subscribe, and then comment down how many significant strikes you think that Joaquin Buckley and Colby Covington are going to combine for. $25 to first. If there's a tie, the tiebreaker goes to the person that commented first. So significant strike contest this week. I effed up last week, but I was very sick and wasn't thinking straight apparently. And then lastly, very special announcement here. I don't know how to put this, but here it goes. Vicente Luque is not a washed bum. He's not. Vicente Luque is not a washed bum. There was no way in hell he was losing to Themba Gorimbo. Vicente Luque is not a washed bum. And that's that. Shout out to Vicente Luque. Pretty much paid for my Tampa trip. Cash, the fight doesn't go. The Luque money line and the Luque sub last night was phenomenal. And mostly thanks to Vicente Luque. And the Bryce Mitchell slamming of Kron Gracie helped as well. But yeah, phenomenal week last week. And that's what I needed. I needed a big week to close the year. This week, there are some spots sticking out. I already have a pretty decent sized bet on one of the fights. And yeah, looking forward to continue it here. But yeah, Vicente Luque is not a wash bum. I wanted to get that out there. I thought that needed to be put out there because he is indeed not a wash bum. So with all that out of the way, I say we get into it. And we're going to start with the first fight of the card. We have Josephine Knutsson going against Piera Rodriguez. We got Josephine Knutsson, 28 years old, 5'3" with a 60-inch reach, 8-0 and 5-0 in her last 5 fights. Piera Rodriguez, 32 years old, 5'3", with a 63.5-inch reach, 9-2 and 3-2 in her last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. We have Knutsson opened up plus 115, which is ridiculous, but she's minus 230 now. Piera Rodriguez opened up minus 135. She's currently plus 195. And yeah, I think there, you could make a case for the underdog here in Rodriguez. The case for her would be, she would need to get takedowns in 2 out of the 3 rounds. But, on the feet, I just think it's one-way traffic. I think Knutsson actually is pretty good really wherever the fight goes. But we did see in her last fight against Pilastri where, she can be taken down. She can be potentially held down and lose minutes. But I do expect her to keep this fight standing for the most part, keep this fight on the feet. I actually do think her takedown defense is pretty good. She's not easy to take down. Did not like seeing a couple things in that Pilastri fight, but when we saw the fight was on the feet, we saw the incredible volume. She can put a pace, she can land a ton, and I just think on the feet it's really one-way traffic. So maybe Rodriguez is able to squeak out 2 rounds, getting some takedowns here, but I expect Knutsson to go out there, stuff some takedowns, keep it standing, and once it is standing, and I don't think it's going to look close. So give me Knutsson to kick the night off with a decision win here. Next fight, we have a really good fight here. Fun fight. Ramon Tavares going against Davey Grant. We got Tavares, 30 years old, 5'8" with a 70-inch reach, 10-2 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Davey Grant, 38 years old, 5'8" with a 69-inch reach, 13-7 and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. We have the closest line fight on the card here. Straight pick'em. Tavares opened up minus 125, currently minus 110. Davey Grant opened up plus 105, currently minus 110. So this is a fight where I actually flipped my pick originally because I did learn something that I think is key here. So it is a close fight. I really like the striking of Tavares. I like the boxing. This guy has a ton of power. You go and watch all of his fight. If you watch all 12 of his fights, you're going to find probably at least 12 knockdowns. This guy's knocking somebody down in really every single fight for the most part. Tons of power in the hands of Tavares. I do worry about the chin of Tavares. Both of his losses do come by knockout. Once was on the Contender Series against City, which was a very bad stoppage, but he did get dropped in that fight early on. And then another time, a while back, he got knocked out in the first round as well, I believe. So I think that the chin, the durability of Tavares is something to be worrisome of. And you can't really say the same thing about Davy Grant. Davy Grant, 20 fights, never been knocked out in his career. When he is losing, he's typically losing by submission or decision for the most part. I think like 5 or 6 submission losses for Davy Grant in like 1 or 2 decision losses. So when he's losing, it mostly it is by sub, and I don't think Tavares is going to sub him here. So originally I'm thinking, yeah, these guys are going to throw down, these guys are going to swing. Maybe Grant can catch Tavares. Grant has power. Tavares a little bit chinny, but I did learn that Davy Grant had like a neck surgery, over the last couple months, and he's been out for about a year and a half. He's turning 39, I think, in a couple days. I don't love that layoff. I don't love the neck surgery. Those neck and back surgeries, I don't know what it is. Obviously, they're brutal, and I'm not a doctor, but what I do know is once these guys with these neck and back injuries, they show back up in the UFC, they just look bad. I can remember like Brian Barberena had like a nasty back injury, showed up, looked awful. There was another recent example. Somebody had a neck injury. Brian Kelleher had like a neck or a back injury, came back and just looked like a shell of himself. And I'm worried about Davy Grant here. This is not a 20-some-year-old Davy Grant. This is a 39-year-old Davy Grant getting that neck surgery, having that year and a half long layoff. So we could see Davy Grant come out here and look like a shell of himself. So I do think it's a tricky fight to predict here, but I'm going to go with the younger guy in Tavares. I think he could potentially knock out Davy Grant, but at the very least, I think he is going to drop him. We've seen Davy Grant drop by Jonathan Martinez. We've seen Davy Grant drop by Martin Day, of all people, and I think Tavares is going to add to his knockdown record here, which is incredible, but I'm not sure he's going to knock him out. So I'll say Tavares wins this fight by decision. But yeah, if this was like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I think it would be Davy Grant. But yeah, there are a lot of concerns for me on the Davy Grant side personally. So I'm going Tavares by decision. All right, moving on. We have Miranda Maverick going against Jamie Lynn Horth. We got Miranda Maverick, 27 years old, 5'3", with a 65.5-inch reach, 14-5 and 4-1 in her last 5 fights. Jamie Lynn Horth, 34 years old, 5'7", with a 66-inch reach, 7-1 and 4-1 in her last 5 fights. So we'll take a look at the odds. A lot of big favorites on this card. Miranda Maverick is one of them. Some of these lines are just kind of stupid. This one, you don't really want to be laying minus 600 on Maverick, but at the same time, I really just can't even think about picking Horth. But yeah, she's minus 600 here. Horth is plus 425, and I'm just not high on Jamie Lynn Horth at all. I think she's like decent. I think she's solid. I think she can definitely win some fights in the UFC. But look at all 3 of her performances in the UFC thus far. Haley Cohen, she won that fight. That was a very close fight. Very close fight. Veronica Hardy, she lost that fight. It was a very close fight. Ivana Petrovic, she won that fight. It was a very close fight. And yeah, that performance kind of shocked me. She was a big favorite in that matchup. And I honestly thought Petrovic, won the fight. We saw Petrovic control her for over half the fight. And I think Petrovic is not that great at all. Like, I bet Luana Carolina against Ivana Petrovic as a dog there. So yeah, I kind of feel like she's been kind of just like skirting by barely in some of these performances. She's having close competitive fights with these lower level fighters like a Petrovic. I know people like Hardy, but I'm not a big fan of her. Lost to Veronica Hardy, barely beat Haley Cohen. I'm just not impressed at all with Jamie Lynn Horth. So Miranda Maverick, though, when she's losing fights, it's to very good fighters in the division like Jasmine Jasdavicius, who's huge and obviously very good. Erin Blanchfield, who's very, very good. And then her other loss was Macy Barber in a fight where she clearly won and she got robbed. So yeah, I don't think that Jamie Lynn Horth is anywhere near the level of a Blanchfield or anywhere near the level of a Jasdavicius as well. So this should be Maverick all day, every day, but the line indicates this line's gotten smashed. I was looking at the lines like on Saturday and I saw Maverick at minus 3 something. I'm like, yeah, I like Maverick to win. Do I like her at minus 3 something? Maybe as a parlay piece, but now she's minus 600. It's like, what's going on, man? How am I supposed to lay minus 600 on Maverick? But I'll take Maverick to win this fight, and I'll take her to win this fight by decision. I don't think there's a great chance of a finish here. Maybe a sub, maybe, but I'll go Miranda Maverick by decision in this one. Moving on, we have Felipe Lima going against Miles Johns. We got Felipe Lima, 26 years old, 5'6", with a 68-inch reach, 13-1, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Miles Johns, 30 years old, 5'7", with a 66-inch reach, 15-2, and 3-1, and 1 no contest in his last 5 fights. Felipe Lima opened up minus 160. He's currently minus 250. Miles Johns opened up plus 140, and he is currently a plus 210 underdog. And yeah, back to these lines, man. Just some of these favorites are way too wide, and this is one that I just don't understand whatsoever. I think Felipe Lima, I think he's a solid fighter, a solid prospect. I think there's a lot of hype on him, but geez, I think we might be overhyping him just a little bit. He came into the UFC on short notice against Muhammad Naimov, who a lot of people are high on. I'm not at all. And that fight was very close, very competitive. He was probably arguably down those first 2 rounds. Those first 2 rounds were close, but and then in the 3rd round, I went back and watched that fight. In the 3rd round, it was the biggest quit job I think I've ever seen, and we've seen some quit jobs in the UFC. We saw, Naimov literally let Felipe Lima tap him out. He lifted up his neck and basically let Lima tap him out. Didn't fight the hands, nothing. It was the most bizarre performance I think I've ever seen out of anybody ever from Naimov. So yeah, he beat Naimov on short notice, but yeah, it was a weird situation there. I think if Lima does win this fight, maybe he's able to finish Johns, like Johns has been finished before. Maybe this fight could look like the Castaneda fight, but, Miles Johns, I think he's the better wrestler here. I think he's going to be able to dictate where this fight takes place. I think he can get takedowns. I've seen Lima taken down outside the UFC easily. Miles Johns has elite defensive striking. He's very hard to hit. This guy's a 69% striking defense. So what I'm getting at is I just think this fight's going to be extremely close. This line makes no sense to me unless you think that Lima's going to finish him, but I'm not as convinced that's going to happen. So I'm going to say this fight goes the distance. I'm going to say this fight is very, very close, 50-50, and since that's the case, I'm going to take the big dog here. Miles Johns going to be a very unpopular pick. People are really high on Lima, but Miles Johns, although I've never really been the biggest Miles Johns fan, Miles Johns is a good fighter. He's a solid fighter. Maybe not the most exciting fighter ever, but what he is really good at is winning minutes and winning decisions. He's undefeated in decisions. So I'm going to go Johns here. Johns to win like a split decision type fight, but I would be shocked if this fight wasn't close. So yeah, this line makes no sense to me. Moving on. We have Sean Woodson going against Fernando Padilla. We got Sean Woodson, 32 years old, 6'2", with a 78-inch reach, 12-1-1 and 4-0-1 in his last 5 fights. Fernando Padilla, 27 years old, 6'1", with a 76-inch reach, 16-5 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. Sean Woodson opened up minus 260, which is crazy. He never looks minus 260 against anybody. He's minus 150 now. Fernando Padilla opened up plus 220, currently plus 135. Very interesting fight here. So one thing I'll say about Sean Woodson is this guy, he cuts way too much weight, I think. I think this weight cut for Sean Woodson is going to eventually catch up to him. 6'2" at featherweight is insane. This guy's way too big for the division, right? And this guy used to, I think, fight at like heavyweight before. And now he's fighting at like featherweight. It makes no sense to me. So I think the weight cut for Sean Woodson is eventually got to catch up to this guy, right? What I'll also say is Sean Woodson does a really good job, right, at using his length, his range, that size. And he can give a lot of guys some problems, and he has in the past. But anytime he's fought somebody that can match that length, he's looked really bad. We'll go back to the Luis Saldana fight, right? Luis Saldana, this guy is 5'11". He's long, he's lengthy. I don't think he's that great at all, but yeah, he's long, he's lengthy, right? Luis Saldana basically finished Sean Woodson in the first round. He dropped him hard early on in the round and then dropped him again, knocked him down bad, and then instead of going for the finish, like the ref was about to stop it, instead of going for that finish, he illegally kneed Sean Woodson, gave Woodson time to recover. Saldana gassed out. fight ended up being a draw, but that was a really bad look to me. If you're getting dropped like that by Luis Saldana, something's wrong. And, there's some excuses for Woodson on that night. He was dealing with some stuff, but there are no excuses. There are no excuses almost getting finished by Luis Saldana. The other tall, lengthy guy that he fought in the past was Julian Erosa. Julian Erosa, 6'1", tall, lengthy guy. He was having success early because Erosa is a walking punching bag, but eventually Erosa was able to drag the fight down to the mat, and I believe he locked up a Darce. What did he lock up? What did he lock up? Darce? Yeah, locked up a Darce, third round. I think Woodson was even minus 500, minus 600 in that fight. But yeah, Julian Erosa locked up that Darce in the third round. So my thinking here is Sean Woodson, I do think is a great striker. I think is a great boxer, does a really good job with that range, that length. But Fernando Padilla can match that length a little bit. Fernando Padilla is 6'1". Fernando Padilla has a 76-inch reach. He's long and rangy. And the difference between these two is, yes, Sean Woodson's the more technical striker. His striking, his boxing is really good. I like the volume, but Sean Woodson has zero power. Zero power. He's not hurting anybody ever unless he's facing like a Colin England. Fernando Padilla, this guy has 5 losses, never been finished. Fernando Padilla has a ton of power, and Padilla has a very, very slick grappling game. He doesn't go to it often. He's not going to go out there and offensively wrestle, but if he hurts you, he's snatching up your neck, and we saw that in the Padilla fight. And if this fight hits the ground at all, he's probably going to sub you. I think he's either a brown belt in BJJ, maybe a black, but I think a brown belt in BJJ. Very, very slick on the ground. So I think Padilla has all the finishing upside. I think he hits much, much harder. I think he has the grappling advantage. And he's the underdog. So I'm going to go Padilla here. I think he club and subs Woodson. I think he's going to hurt him on the feet and then submit him shortly after. Obviously, there is a path for Woodson to just, box up Padilla across 3 rounds, make the fight look a little boring, and maybe win a decision. Sean Woodson is really good at decisions, but I think Padilla has some finishing upside here. So I'll go Padilla. I think he's going to win this fight by second round submission. Next fight, we have Joel Alvarez going against Drakkar Klose. We got Alvarez, 31 years old, 6'3", with a 77-inch reach, 21-3, and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Drakkar Klose, 36 years old, 5'9", with a 70-inch reach, 15-2-1, and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. We have Alvarez open up minus 250, currently minus 425. Drakkar Klose open up plus 210. He's currently plus 325. And yeah, I think it's a pretty brutal matchup for Drakkar Klose. Money's poured in on Alvarez throughout the week, and I think that's probably warranted here. So I'm actually kind of worried about Drakkar Klose. So there was that whole situation with Jeremy Stephens, right, where Drakkar Klose cut all that weight, and then Jeremy Stephens pushed him, ended up getting really badly injured there. I think he potentially got a concussion or a couple of different injuries with that Jeremy Stephens push, which is crazy to say, but yeah, that push I think really affected him. And since then, I don't know. I just don't think he's looking the same. I don't think he's taking shots the same nowadays. And I went back and watched that Joaquin Silva fight, and it wasn't a great look. Joaquin Silva is typically a guy that's going to slow down in the third round, right? But it was actually Drakkar Klose who really slowed down in the third round, and we saw in the third round, Joaquin Silva both dropped Drakkar Klose badly, almost knocked him out, and then Joaquin Silva almost got him in a guillotine. It was very tight, very close, and I'm thinking to myself, geez, if Joe Alvarez gets this dude close in those same positions, Joe Alvarez is going to finish you. Joaquin Silva, the nickname's Neto BJJ, that should be taken away because he couldn't even submit Clay Guida. If Joe Alvarez gets your neck, you're going to sleep or you're tapping. So this dude, Joe Alvarez, I think is an absolute problem. I think he's turning a corner in his career. I think he's improving at rapid rates. Only 31 years old. I think he's about to be coming into his prime. Every time we see Alvarez in there, this guy just looks levels and levels above what he was in the previous fight. And I think we saw his best performance in his last fight against Elvis Brenner, being the first person to ever finish Elvis Brenner ever. So yeah, I like Alvarez here. I think on the feet, Drakkar Klose is screwed because on the feet, Alvarez has a ton of power. And then on the ground, I think Jakar Klose is screwed here because Joel Alvarez has a nasty, nasty submission game. Like, this guy has like 18 submissions on his record, 21 wins, 21 finishes. His striking looks better than ever. I'm worried about Jakar Klose here. So I just don't see how Klose wins this fight outside of, maybe a puncher's chance, but Klose really isn't knocking out anybody. So it's kind of pick your poison with Klose. He's going to go out there and stand at range for 15 minutes and potentially get knocked out at some point, or is he going to try to wrestle and probably get his neck snatched up at some point? So I'm going to go Joe Alvarez here. I think it's a club and sub. I think he hurts Jakar. I think Jakar is going to shoot in, and once you shoot in on Joe Alvarez, hurt or not, you're probably going to sleep shortly after. So I'll go Joe Alvarez. I'll take him to win this fight by second round submission. Moving on, we have Michael Johnson going against Ottman Azaitar. We got Michael Johnson, 38 years old, 5'10", with a 73.5-inch reach, 22-19 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Ottman Azaitar, 34 years old, 5'8", with a 71-inch reach, 13-2 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. Michael Johnson opened up minus 200. He's currently minus 210. Ottman Azaitar opened up plus 170. He is currently plus 180. Oh, and yeah, it's a Michael Johnson fight. So there are 2 very untrustworthy fighters on this card. One is named Michael Johnson, and one is named Manel Kape. I think both these guys are just so untrustworthy, so inconsistent. It's so hard to bet on their fights. Michael Johnson especially, though. I mean, there's been just time and time again where it's like Michael Johnson should go out there and beat this guy and beat him easily, and then just somehow finds a way to lose. He's one of those guys that just somehow, some way, finds a way to lose, even when there's no way he should lose, right? I mean, Michael Johnson, the guy has 19 losses. 19 losses. It shows in his record, 22-19. He's lost so many fights that he should go out there and win, and that's kind of the case here. Like, he should go out there and beat Ottman Azaitar. I think skill for skill, Michael Johnson's minus 1,000 here. The problem is Michael Johnson just finds ways to somehow, some way, lose fights. So I typically like to not bet on Michael Johnson fights. And even last fight against Darius Flowers, it's like I like the fight doesn't go in that fight for obvious reasons. Darius Flowers does not have 15-minute cardio. Darius Flowers, I don't think had ever been the distance. Michael Johnson still even managed to lose me money in that situation. Like, how on God's green earth do you not finish Darius Flowers, who's been finished in all of his losses, Michael Johnson? Like, that's sickening. So even here, it's like, I kind of like the fight doesn't go, but if you can't finish Darius Flowers, can you finish anybody at this point ever again? I don't know. So how I'm kind of seeing it is I think it's going to be Michael Johnson looking like a big favorite as long as his chin can hold up, but that is an if. That is an if. I would not even think about laying minus 210 on Michael Johnson. Geez, I don't know. I'm going to pick Michael Johnson just because I have to, because he's so much better than Ottman Azaitar at everything. But Azaitar has power, and Michael Johnson loves to lose fights he's supposed to win. So I say this every Michael Johnson fight, tread lightly, and we'll see. We'll see. The pick is Michael Johnson. I'll say he really should finish this guy. I'll say Michael Johnson by knockout in the first round, but I don't know if I'm betting this one here. I really don't want to lose money on a Michael Johnson fight, but the pick is Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson by first round KO. Moving on, we got Navajo Sterling going against Tokkos. We got Sterling, 27 years old, 6'4", with an 83-inch reach, 5-0. And 5-0 in his only 5 fights. Tokkos, 34 years old, 6'4", with a 76-inch reach, 10-4, and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Sterling opened at minus 500, currently the biggest favorite on the card at minus 800. Tokkos opened up plus 375. He's currently a plus 500 underdog. And yeah, should be a pretty easy pick here. Should be Navajo Sterling. I think this guy could be the real deal. 27 years old, He has that strike and the kickboxing background, city kickboxing guy, so you know he's going to come in here with great takedown defense. All those guys have elite takedown defense. I'm sure they're working on it each and every single day. And, Tokkos is just very hittable. I think he's very chinny. And I just think it's a setup spot, quite frankly, for Sterling to go out there and not only get a win, but get a vicious knockout win. Should be Sterling. I do think he might, take his time early on. So I'm thinking like a second round knockout for Navajo Sterling. But yeah, just everything screams setup. Sterling should go out there and knock this fool out within the first 10 minutes. So I'm going Navajo Sterling to win this fight by second round knockout. All right. Next, we have Daniel Marcos going against Adrian Yanez. We got Daniel Marcos, 31 years old, 5'7" with a 69-inch reach, 16-0 and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Adrian Yanez, I forgot to type up the tail of the tape there, and let this be a lesson to not do drugs, because if you do drugs, you'll end up like me, and you don't want. You don't want to end up like me. So, don't do drugs. Anyway, Yanez, 31 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach, 17-5 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. This line's moved quite a bit. Like Marcos, he was, I thought, like minus 140 at one point. He actually opened up the underdog at plus 145, minus 210 now. And Yanez opened up minus 170 as the favorite. He's now plus 180. So this line's moved a ton in favor of Marcos. And yeah, I do like Marcos, probably not at the line where it's at now. So I might be staying away here. But the way I'm seeing this is I think Adrian Yanez has very good boxing. I love the volume. I love the power. But Daniel Marcos just seems to have a lot more tools on the feet. Marcos, really good striking, really good kicks, good leg kicks, good body kicks, good head kicks, can mix it up to the legs, body, and head. And yeah, good volume in his own right. Doesn't have as much power as Yanez, but can definitely hurt his opponents. And Adrian Yanez is a guy that, I don't know, I'm kind of worried about the durability a bit. Obviously, we saw the Martinez fight where, Martinez hurt his legs multiple times, got that leg kick knockout. Obviously, Marcos does not kick as hard as Martinez, but wasn't the best look. And then also what wasn't the best look for Adrian Yanez was getting just starched by Rob Font, where Rob Font, solid fighter, don't get me wrong, but Rob Font's not starching anybody ever. It's just never, ever, it shouldn't happen. But it happened. It was weird. I think there's a durability issue with Yanez. I think he's very hittable, and I think Marcos can hurt Yanez here. I think he can hurt him to the legs. I think he can hurt him to the body. I think he can hurt him to the head. Like I said, he mixes it up very well, and Yanez is going to leave openings like he always does. So I like Marcos here, and I think he can finish Yanez here. I mean, if Rob Font's knocking you out, I think anybody in the division can knock you out, quite frankly. So I'm going Daniel Marcos here. I think he's going to pick apart Yanez and eventually hurt him and get him out of there in the second round. So it's going to be Daniel Marcos to win this fight and win it by second round knockout. Next, we have Vitor Petrino going against Dustin Jacoby. We got Petrino, 27 years old, 6'2", with a 77.5-inch reach, 11-1 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Dustin Jacoby, 36 years old, 6'3", with a 76-inch reach, 19-9 and 1 and 1-4 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. We have Petrino opened up minus 275. He's currently minus 300. Dustin Jacoby opened up plus 235. He's currently plus 250. And, this is a fight I kind of want nothing to do with. I'm worried about Dustin Jacoby. His last several performances, he's looked rough. I think the durability is waning a little bit for Jacoby. We saw him get dropped and almost finished in the Menafield fight in that third round. We saw him get dropped in the second round of the Mirzakana fight. And then we saw him get knocked out in his last fight against Dominic Reyes. And the thing with Jacoby is this guy, he's been dropped a lot in the past. Like, there was even another fight where, he was dropped twice by Maxim Grishin back in the day, back in 2021. Was dropped twice by Maxim Grishin. But yeah, typically Jacoby will, get knocked down and recover, good recoverability. But yeah, I don't know if that's, that's there anymore. I mean, finally got knocked out against Dominic Reyes. And the thing with Petrino is, I'm not completely sold on this guy, especially at minus 300. I think this could be a close fight, but I think you have to go with Petrino here. This guy's much younger. I think he's improving. I think he has more ways to win as well. I think he can hurt Jacoby. There's a clear power advantage. Jacoby doesn't have much power, whereas Petrino, he has a ton of power. And then I also think Petrino can and will go out here and get takedowns. I think that's a big part of Petrino's game. We've seen it a lot more in the UFC. Outside the UFC, I didn't really see any of that, but inside the UFC, we've been seeing Petrino go out there and wrestle. Took down Tyson Pedro 3 times. Took down Marcin Prachnio 4 times. Took down Anton Turkalj 7 times. Really has got a takedown in every single UFC fight thus far. Even Anthony Smith, where he got guillotined. But yeah, that's a big part of Petrino's game in the UFC, I guess. So, and yeah, he could do that here against Dustin Jacoby, who's not hard to take down, quite frankly. He's hard to hold down, but not hard to take down. So, yeah, I'll say Petrino mixes in the takedowns, maybe lands some big shots here and there, maybe drops Jacoby, because Jacoby likes getting dropped. But I'll say Petrino does enough to win a decision in this one. All right, next we have Manel Kape going against Bruno Silva. We got Kape, 31 years old, 5'5", with a 68-inch reach, 19-7, and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Bruno Silva, 34 years old, 5'4", with a 66-inch reach, 14-5-2, and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Manel Kape opened up minus 275. He's currently minus 365. Bruno Silva opened up plus 245. He's currently plus 300. And yeah, like I said earlier, Manel Kape, one of the most untrustworthy fighters in the UFC. I think something's wrong with this guy, to be honest. Hearing some of his interviews, it's like this guy's delusional, I think. Phenomenal fighter when he puts it all together, but there's some performances where he literally doesn't show up. It's like, what are you doing, Manel Kape? Why are you not fighting? Like that Muhammad Mokaev performance, that had to have been one of the worst performances I think I've ever seen in my entire life. It was probably almost just as bad as that William Knight performance against Marcin Prachnio, where William Knight landed 3 strikes across 15 minutes. That pretty much happened in the Kape Mokaev fight. Kape got outlanded 30-20 against Mokaev in significant strikes. Like, that should not be happening. How do you land 20 strikes across 15 minutes, Manel Kape? And then even in the Pantoja fight, when he made his debut, didn't really show up there at all. Didn't do anything in that fight. Against Matheus Nicolau. Matheus Nicolau does nothing in his fights ever, and Manel Kape went out there and really did nothing in that Nicolau fight either. Lost the Nicolau fight doing nothing. Lost the Pantoja fight doing nothing. Lost the Mokaev fight doing nothing. But there's also performances where Manel Kape looks like a star. He looks incredible. He looks like the future of the division. He went out there and starched Zalga Sumagulov, who's extremely tough. I don't think he'd ever been knocked out to that point. Just beat the brakes off of him. Flying knee win against Ode Osborne. He beat the brakes off of David Dvorak across 15 minutes. Almost finished him on multiple occasions. So, there's fights where he looks really, really good. And then there's fights where he doesn't look like he's trying out there. So, man, if Manel Kape tries here, if he tries in this fight, I think it's a good fight for him. I think he's much better than Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva, he's decent, but he also was looking rough against Cody Durden for the first 7.5 minutes of that fight up until he caught Durden. And actually, it looked like Durden was about to break him and finish him. I saw a look of panic on the face of Bruno Silva, and to his credit, ended up catching Durden and knocking him out, but that wasn't the best look in the world. So I think if Kape goes out there and fights like he did in the Zalgas fight, fights like he did in the Ode fight, I think he finishes Bruno Silva here. I think he can knock him out. So I'll go Manel Kape. I'll take him to win this fight by second round knockout. I think he has a major skill advantage here, but the problem with Kape is I don't think he always utilizes all his skills. So, which he should. I mean, he's probably still really close to a title shot. Like, there's nobody else for Pantoja to go out there and fight. Like, Pantoja's already beat everybody, so hasn't fought. Well, he fought Kape before, and that fight was competitive. Like, we could see Kape Pantoja in the near future if he goes out there and not only wins this fight. I think he needs to make a statement here, in my opinion. Like, he can't just go out there and win a boring decision. He needs to make a statement here if he wants a crack at the title. So I'll go Kape here. I'll go Kape by second round knockout. I'm not sure I want to trust him fully, though. Moving on, we have the co-main event. It is Billy Quarantillo going against Cub Swanson. We got Billy Q, 36 years old, 5'10", with a 70-inch reach, 18-6, and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Cub Swanson, 41 years old, 5'8", with a 70-inch reach, 29-14, and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Billy Q opened up -155, currently -155. Cub Swanson opened up +135, currently +135. Fun co-main event. Going to be enjoying this one, but it's a really tricky one for me to call because I don't know. Billy Q, his last couple fights, I don't know what's going on with the dude. Like even that win against Damon Jackson, I did not like how he looked. I mean, he did not look great against Damon Jackson. Like Damon Jackson's a guy, in my opinion, who I think if you should be finishing, and he didn't. He wasn't able to finish Damon Jackson, and quite frankly, he didn't really come close at all. Just not the best performance. And then prior to that, he gets starched by Edson Barbosa. Not the best performance. And then he gets starched by Yusuf Zalal. Not the best performance. So three times in a row where it's like, is this the same Billy Q? I don't know. I don't know. He's taken a ton of damage throughout his career. But yeah, he's going to be the younger guy here. He's going to be the younger guy by like 5 years. Cub Swanson, he's taken a ton of damage as well. But what I always liked about Billy Quarantillo is the toughness, the pace, the pressure, the volume, the grappling. I think he has a lot of tools that can help him here in this fight, but also he is very hittable. He's willing to eat one to give one. And doing that against Cub Swanson is terrifying. Cub Swanson, he still has power. As we know, power is the last thing to go. We just saw Cub Swanson knock out Darren Elkins, who's very tough in his own right, in the first round. We saw him knock out Daniel Pineda. So Cub Swanson, he still has some power, and that's worrisome. But if Billy Q can kind of weather the early storm, eat some shots, put that pace up, I think he can go out there and potentially break Cub Swanson. And if he can get this fight down to the mat, like we've seen Cub Swanson submitted a lot in his career. We saw, I think, Edgar submit him, Holloway submit him, Moicano submit him, Ortega submit him. You know, some of these guys really good grapplers, but still, we've seen him get submitted a lot in the UFC. I think he has like 7 submission losses. Like, it would not shock me if Billy Q was able to eventually get on top at some point, and Billy Q's a black belt, locking in a submission at some point later in the fight if he's able to break Cub Swanson. But I do think Billy's going to have to walk through fire here a little bit, which is scary because the chin of Billy Q, I'm not sure if it's quite there anymore at this point. So I think it's going to be a banger. I think it's going to be a firefight. But I'll take Billy Q here. I'll take Billy Q, and I think he wins this fight by 3rd round submission. I think we're going to get a vintage Billy Q performance where he starts slow, gets beat up, and then he starts beating you up, and then he gets you out of there late. So give me Billy Q to win this fight by 3rd round submission. All right, and then we have the main event, and just want to remind you guys, I'm doing the Significant Strike contest this week because I completely forgot last week, so type down below your Significant Strike guess combined between Joaquin Buckley and Colby Covington. But yeah, Buckley, Covington, fun main event. We got Buckley, 30 years old, 5'10", with a 76-inch reach, 20-6, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Colby Covington, 36 years old, 5'11", with a 72-inch reach, 17-4, and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Joaquin Buckley opened up -175. He's currently -280. Colby Covington opened up +150. He's currently +240. And yeah, I mean, this is probably this could be one of the dumbest lines I think I've ever seen. I don't get it, man. I mean, I was going back and watching tape of Joaquin Buckley. I wanted to see him versus some wrestlers, which he hasn't really fought many wrestlers. Like Stephen Thompson, is he a wrestler? No. Nursultan Ruzaboev is a complete fraud. Vicente Luque, my guy, is he a wrestler? No, not really. Alex Morono refuses to wrestle. Andre Fiallo is definitely not a wrestler. Chris Curtis, no. Imavov, is he a wrestler? No, but can he wrestle? Yes, and he did. And so he did take down Buckley a couple times. Duraev, he's terrible, but can he wrestle? A little bit. He took down Buckley twice. Antonio Arroyo, grappler. Alessio Di Chirico, striker. Jordan Wright. Impa Kasaganai, striker. Kevin Holland, striker. Hasn't really fought many guys that are looking to take him down. Like I said, Imavov a little bit. Duraev a little bit. But what shocked me was the Abdulrazak Al-Hassan fight. And as we know, Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, this is a guy that has 12 wins, right? All 12 of those wins come in the first round. He has not won any other way other than a first round knockout. He also had like a early second round knockout. But when Abdulrazak Al-Hassan's winning fights, it's early, right? I went back and watched that fight, and Abdulrazak Al-Hassan is ragdolling Joaquin Buckley in the third round. He's ragdolling him. He was 3 for 3 on takedowns. He was taking down Buckley, and Buckley just had no answer. And this is Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, a third round Abdulrazak Al-Hassan. Like, I was shocked at what I was watching. And there's some other fights where, Buckley outside the UFC, he is getting taken down and he's getting controlled. So, I think the line is where it's at because of Colby's last performance. It was the worst performance of his entire career. He did not show up that night. He did have an excuse that he broke his foot in the first 30 seconds, and he did show, proof of that with an x-ray, but, that doesn't excuse how bad that performance was. He looked like he didn't start fighting until like the fourth round, and when he did start fighting, he actually had a lot of success against Edwards in that fourth, fifth round, but yeah, it just was a bizarre performance, right? But, other than that, we haven't really seen Colby go out there and just put up an egg like that ever. I mean, that was his worst performance ever. So yeah, if he goes in there against Buckley and does the same thing, of course he's going to lose. He's going to lose against anybody. I mean, put him in there against Jordan Wright, the Beverly Hills Ninja. If he goes on there and has that Leon Edwards game plan, he's not beating anybody in the UFC. But if we see the Colby Covington, that fought even Jorge Masvidal, Tyron Woodley, that Colby Covington, I think he can take down Joaquin Buckley easily, especially as the fight goes on. Buckley's never seen a fourth, never seen a fifth. Covington's going to have the cardio advantage. So, yeah, I guess maybe Buckley could knock out Colby. Buckley's really good at doing that, but Colby's only been knocked out once, and it was against Kamaru Usman in the fifth round, and it was kind of a questionable stoppage. So I'm going to go against the grain here again. It's going to be a very unpopular pick, but as long as Colby's not completely done and wants to be, as long as Colby wants to be here, I think he has a really good chance to win this fight. So I'll go Colby Covington to win by decision. Maybe he gets knocked out and I look silly, but that's kind of just how I'm seeing it. Colby Covington by decision. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you all for a fun year. I'll be back next year. I think it's going to be my 7th year next year. So looking forward to that. Have some big plans for 2025. And yeah, on your way out, if you guys could like the video, subscribe, leave me a comment down those significant strikes. All that does help and go a long way. If you guys do want to support me more, check out dfsbythenumbers.com. Yeah, other than that, I'm going to be going live Friday, right after the weigh-ins, I'm thinking. So my flight leaves at like 2:30. I'm thinking the weigh-in should be at 9 o'clock in the morning, take about an hour. So I'm thinking about going live like 10-ish on Friday, maybe 10, 15, 10, around there, and then doing my final thoughts, my post weigh-in live stream then, and then the betting breakdown video will follow shortly after. So all my content should be out before like noon on Friday, and then I'm taking off to Tampa Bay. I'm getting some sun finally. This weather's sucked. Weather sucked. It's been awful. I've been sick, so it's going to be good to get some sun and have some fun in Tampa. Maybe hit up some strippers and yeah, it's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a fun time. Fun time in Tampa. So best of luck, everybody. Enjoy the fights. Enjoy the last card of the year, and we will talk to you guys soon. See you later.